Following the departure from power of Siad Barre in January 1991, the country fell into fairly severe conflict, which disrupted the economy and eventually led to fairly severe conditions of starvation and misery in general, a very severe humanitarian problem. The world attempted to deal with this, but unfortunately the activities of the Somali warlords interfered with the efforts on the part of various United Nations and other agencies, and also non-governmental organizations, to try to deal with the problems of hunger in Somalia.
Well, the UN and U.S. involvement began in 1992. Initially, the U.S. involvement was Operation Provide Relief, where there was a small airlift capability that was put in at Mombasa in Kenya and conducted airlift operations into the needy areas in Somalia. At approximately the same time, the UN began UNISOM 1, which was a peacekeeping operation based on an agreed-upon line drawn through Mogadishu by the factions that maintained an observation and monitoring of the peaceful agreement that had been reached by the factions, and also supported the humanitarian operations that were going on. It turned out that the violence still continued, and the UN operation was not enough, nor did it have enough power or punch to contain the violence. Based on that, President Bush committed the U.S. to Operation Restore Hope, and UNITAF, the United Task Force, came in December of 1992. That operation lasted for approximately 5 months, and eventually the UN began UNISOM 2, which was a much stronger operation, larger force, meant to be able to control the violence, to contain it, and to make peace in effect. That has lasted up until this point, and now the return of the U.S. forces after their involvement in UNISOM 2 and then departure in March of 1994 is to help the withdrawal of the UNISOM 2 forces, the last part of the UN operation, which should end in the beginning of March of 1995. Received the order in August of 1994. In effect, at that time, the UN had asked the United States for help in covering the withdrawal of the UN forces. There was a planning staff sent by the Central Command to the UN headquarters in New York. We were in close contact with that planning staff, and they were beginning to feed us information on the upcoming operation, what the UNISOM plan was and what their intentions were. So our priority was to begin to understand the operation from both sides, UNISOM and our requirements, and to begin to look at the tasks and how that would manifest itself in the kinds of forces we needed. So constructing the CTF with the right kinds of forces, laying out the force composition, that was the first priority. The second phase was the deployment of the forces to the theater. And the forces came from many places. They came from Southern California with 1 MEF forces, and from Okinawa, Japan with the Special Purpose MAGTF, the Marine Expeditionary Unit and the Amphibious Ready Group already in the Indian Ocean and up along the Persian Gulf. Also the Joint Special Operations Task Force, the Joint PSYOPS Task Force, the Air Force Forces component that would be coming in and putting in our joint support bases in Mombasa. Second phase was assembling all those forces and deploying them to the theater of operations.
The main component of the U.S. shipping in this operation is the Essex Amphibious Ready Group, composed of USS Essex, USS Ogden, and USS Fort Fisher. In addition, USS Belleau-Wood, our flagship, both in the Naval Forces Command business and the commander of the Combined Task Forces flagship, has been added to that group. So we have 2 large deck amphibious landing ships, assault ships, and we have 2 others. And they carry the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit and its augmentation from the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force in Okinawa. Then in addition to that, to those amphibious ships, we're adding USS Lake Erie coming down from the Gulf, an Aegis cruiser. And then constantly throughout the operation, support has been provided both to U.S. ships and to coalition shipping by a very capable set of combat logistics ships. We've had 3 from the Military Sealift Command, USNS Spica, a fleet storage ship, USNS Walter S. Deal, an oiler, and USNS John Erickson, another oiler. All of those operated by the Military Sealift Command. And then in addition, we've had an ammunition ship, USS Kiska, which has performed invaluable roles for the force. So altogether, there have been 9 ships plus the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit that has been reinforced from Okinawa. A very important, considerable U.S. Navy and Marine Corps presence. The force that we are using was largely in place in the Western Indian Ocean and in the Arabian Gulf, and so didn't have very far to come. The exception is USS Belleau-Wood from Okinawa, coming actually from our home port in Sasebo and picking the Marines up in Okinawa. Belleau-Wood was tasked to participate in this operation because of the command and control capability, the additional amphibious lift, the aircraft that was brought to augment the marine aviation capabilities for this operation. But the remainder of the ships that will be involved were all in theater. And it's important to know that because the Essex Amphibious Ready Group was nearing the end of a regular deployment, and bringing that tremendous amphibious capability to bear in this operation in East Africa was only a matter of moving that group about 4 or 5 days out of the Gulf and down to this area.
The USS Belleau-Wood is acting as the command and control platform and headquarters for the Commander Combined Task Force United Shield. In addition, we are carrying embarked staffs for the Naval Forces Component Commander and the Joint Special Operations Task Force Commander. So in one sense, we are acting as the platform from which decisions are being made and briefings are being prepared in support of the United Shield operation. That is in addition to our principal role as an amphibious assault ship. And with that, we bring a number of capabilities to include both hellborne and seaborne assault forces that we can project ashore in support of this operation. I have embarked a special purpose Marine Air-Ground Task Force that includes both ground troops and aviation assets. The aviation assets are AV-8s, H-53 heavy lift helicopters, H-46 medium lift helicopters, Cobra gunships, and Huey utility aircraft. Preparations that were necessary, certainly to prepare the ship to embark the large number of personnel on board, were extensive. Not a lot of notification, but again, I think that proved and showed the flexibility and the mobility that the Navy Marine Corps team has. That we were able to execute this with little notification, and I believe, and I'm very sincere in this, I think we've done an exceptional job up to this point.
Third phase was the standing off the coast of Somalia to begin to provide the coverage for the UNISOM forces as they began to draw down, heading toward the final phase, which would be the withdrawal of the rear guard for them. So this third phase has lasted from the 8th of February for about approximately 3 weeks as they drew down to their final rear guard force.
Then the current ops, that's really the moment-by-moment monitoring of United Shield. This is where we track the forces on the ground, track the aircraft in the air, and track the situation within Mogadishu that will face us as U.S. forces come ashore. While the current operations is looking at the moment today out to 24 to 48 hours, future operations is out in the 72 to 96 hour time frame, and perhaps even farther. Looking at, in this operations case, looking at the critical decision points that can influence and change the mission.
Well, the CTF Forward, as I said, originally started out as a planning liaison cell and evolved into the CTF Forward concept. It's kind of a unique concept. In fact, it's the first time that I know of that anybody's done anything quite like this. We started out as a liaison cell between coalition forces under the UN Operational Directive from New York and the UNISOM II forces that are in the process of withdrawing. The purpose of our team coming here was to make that initial interface over the period of time before the coalition forces arrived and actually took over the security mission for the rear guard. So over the past month, my team, a team that initially was constituted of only 12 individuals and has since grown to almost 60, has been to be the go-between between the CTF commander afloat and the UNISOM II forces and their command element here. And over the course of the last month, we have been the primary resource for the commander of the Combined Task Force to provide him and all the higher headquarters intelligence, on-the-ground intelligence. We have been the only on-the-ground intelligence. And it's unique because of the fact that this is probably one of the first times that anybody can remember that we've actually had the cooperation, the interagency cooperation between the military and the non-military agencies. So I actually have a non-military agency intel cell here functioning, working with and for me here to provide General Zinni intelligence support.
Well, what we have out here is we have an AOB, an Advanced Operating Base, and 4 coalition support teams. The Advanced Operating Base is a 14-man element, which is essentially a command and control element for the coalition support teams that are out in the field.
Yeah, since our arrival on the 3rd of February, we have done extensive coordination with the Bangladeshis and the Pakistanis at all levels, from the CTF level all the way down to the platoon commander, and in some cases up to this point down to the squad leader level, in order to ensure that when we conduct our relief in place, our passages of lines, that this is all coordinated, because it's quite a significant movement of troops in a short period of time in a very small place, and requires a great deal of detailed coordination. Well, as you may know, right now ongoing is a very intense and extensive PSYOPs effort being conducted to let the Somali people know that the new port is going to be closed. The new port is going to be militarized. That's ongoing right now, so that I anticipate once we get into the new port that it will be swept of all the people. It will be a military port. We are undertaking a fairly significant engineer effort to provide us some standoff. As an example, my intent is right now is to not only close the main gate, but there's a truck holding area out there in front of the main gate, and 100 yards distance from the main gate out to the road via Roma is an area where the trucks can enter. My intent right now, and it's been approved by the commander of the Combined Task Force, to close and seal that gate to provide us with standoff. And that's my goal, is to provide as much standoff, build as much standoff with our engineering effort as possible in order to give us some distance from the Somali people.
We have the ability, using rotary wing aircraft, to drop leaflets to convey specific messages to the Somali people. And it's not important that we convey words to them. What is important is that we've put the words together and the visual images together where we help change their behavior to facilitate the Combined Task Force operations. We don't want to just tell the Somalis something. We want to be able to cause the Somalis to do something. And for the most part in this operation, we have a mission to try to minimize casualties, both U.S., coalition, and Somali, and to avoid conflict. We have many products that have already been developed that we could use in a contingency situation, for example, to support the ground QRF or the aerial QRF. As well as we have loudspeaker tapes that have been prepared where if a situation is developing and we hope that we can solve the situation before it becomes a problem. For example, there's a crowd forming in Mogadishu, is approaching the new port. We could take the aerial loudspeaker system in, talk to people, explain to them what is going on, hopefully calm their fears to where we can stop a group of people from forming into a mob and then into a demonstration. General Zinni has said that he sees the aerial loudspeaker system as his first non-lethal fire support for the operation.
Well, the coalition forces have had a varied number of roles. The naval forces that have come along have provided some of the sea control and protection at sea. We have naval forces, particularly the Italian forces, that will be by our side accompanying us on the landing and in the security mission ashore in the fourth phase. We have coalition forces that have provided some of the air coverage, quick reaction force, medical support. We have coalition forces that have helped us with the logistics, coalition forces that have been standing by should we need to conduct an emergency evacuation of UNISOM forces across the beach and onto waiting ships, and coalition forces that are ashore as part of UNISOM that will eventually come under the tactical control of the CTF. And they will make up the rear guard, maintaining security at the port and airfield to the last moment, and then eventually passing that responsibility to us as we cover their withdrawal onto their final ships and movement out of the area of operations. So virtually every facet of this operation, there's been coalition involvement.
As a practical matter, to me as commander of the combined naval forces, it's important to have the raw combat power and the flexibility that comes with the coalition forces. The biggest contributor afloat are the Italians.
Italy has traditionally been present in Somalia since a lot of years and always tried to help these people to grow and also supporting them after they achieved independence. We have taken part in all previous operations in Somalia because we felt the need to help once more this country survive and develop a process of modernization. And for this reason, we have, when the United Nations asked Italy for a contribution to this operation, we immediately offered our support. The consistency of the contribution is without any doubt of great value, we think. This operation is also important for us because we have the opportunity to operate in a real-world activity at an equal level with our amphibious forces, together with the best, what we think are the best amphibious forces in the world, the U.S. Marine Corps.
The biggest contributors at the moment in these last phases of UN operations in Somalia, the biggest contributors of troops are the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis are also going to be ably represented at sea. We're about to be joined by two Pakistani surface combatants, Tugril and Shamshir, and their replenishment ship Nasser. A very large commitment for them and a long way to come. It's about a 3,700-mile round trip for the Pakistani ships to come from Pakistan. The Malaysians have sent two general purpose ships, very capable ships which have come, by the time they make their round trip to Malaysia for this operation, they will have come 6,000 miles or so. This is the longest out-of-area deployment, I believe, in the history of the Malaysian Navy. A very substantial commitment to them, and of course General Abu, a Malaysian four-star general, is the commander of the UNISOM forces that remain in Somalia. The French have been present. They were here before the combined task force got here, represented by a frigate that had been off the coast of Somalia for some time. At one time or other during the course of this operation, there will be 3 ships from the French Navy here, Commandant Bory, a frigate, Destin d'Oeuvre, another French frigate, and their logistics or amphibious ship Champlain, a very large commitment. About half of the Indian Ocean surface force for the French Navy will be here as well. And the United Kingdom is represented by HMS Exeter. Exeter is a destroyer which joined us as we and the Italians came together off of Kenya for the exercise in preparation for coming to Somalia. The British joined, so they've been with us from the beginning. And Exeter brings a very large capability as well.
Some of the high points for the operation to date include our work with the Pakistanis in developing the barrier plan down in the Green Beach area. In addition, the Pakistanis have laid concertina wire through the entire length of the perimeter from position we call Mig Alley all the way down to Green Beach. In addition, the Bangladeshis have done a number of things in Newport to improve the defenses there. So those two things tied in together have really enhanced the force protection, really have received a great deal of cooperation from our coalition partners ashore, and that's just been very, very refreshing. Our Italian partners out here have also provided us with a great deal of information and cooperation to develop the defensive plan. As you know, the Italians will be taking up a portion of our perimeter. They're part of the landing force, and that's been very, very important to us in terms of making sure that everything comes off like it should.
Absolutely. I've been very impressed with the UN forces, the Bangladeshis and the Pakistanis. I've been pleasantly surprised that when we talk to them about different portions of the operations, for instance, the relief in place, the passage of the lines, is that they know the doctrine and they know it cold, and in some cases they know it better than we do. But they know our doctrine, they know what's expected, they were prepared, very well organized, very well, very, very professional, and that has really eased, taken a lot of the burden of the planning off of everybody's shoulders because of their professionalism. But I've been very impressed by not only their ability to plan, but to execute things that they've said that they were going to do. It's been done right on schedule every time.
The fourth phase, the critical phase, will be the withdrawal of the last remaining rearguard forces of UNISOM, covered by the U.S. forces that will go ashore at the very last moment. That withdrawal phase will end when the last of the U.S. and coalition forces are withdrawn from the beach.
Primarily, the whole area from the new port all the way down to Green Beach is going to be secured, which is about 4.5, 5 kilometers wide. From the Green Beach, moving down to the southwest to the UAE camp, into no man's land, what we call Mig Alley, all along that ridge that runs from the northeast down to the southwest, down to Green Beach. That will provide the standoff to allow the Bangladeshis and the Pakistanis to withdraw and allow us to withdraw ourselves, hopefully unmolested by the clans.
Just keep on. Yeah, I just keep. I just want to make sure nothing comes out of the gate there. was hoping that we could get police in position first. I think the crowds and the very efficient withdrawal caused the people to come out of the woodwork a lot quicker. We watched the technicals come in. It was obvious from the beginning that they were pushing people back and clearing it. So I made the decision from up here in the OP not to fire on them. We watched them for a while, ensured that that's what they were doing. When they got a little close, we fired a couple warning shots. They waved back, acknowledging they understood, and moved back across the other side of the ramp. And at this point, we're in communication with the police and trying to get them in position. I guess if there's something encouraging about the confusion this morning, it looked like the technicals were interested in coming in, or the militia, and getting the people out. So we're hopeful that that gets a good relationship with the police effort and as we sort things out. And as you see, we'll keep the air up just in case.
The withdrawal, in my mind, is probably right now looms as the most difficult portion, barring any significant interference by the clans and the militia. To me, the decision point will be, of course, I'll do it on order of the new commander, but the decision point will be that the Pakistanis have loaded all of their gear, equipment, and people. They're safely out of the new port, and at that point, there is really no reason for us to remain any longer. And I would like to get out of the new port as soon as possible, and we have a plan to do that very quickly, to evacuate the port, not waste any time. We'll be out of there quickly.
This is really the first such operation after the end of the Cold War. I don't mean United Shield, I mean the whole American and United Nations effort to meet the problem of Somalia. It was big, it was complex, there were some mistakes, but did anyone ever think that there wouldn't be in the first of such things?
In a situation that has its hazards, they were under some pressure as the troops came off of the beach from potential hostile fire. The whole thing was done very well. The important lessons include the need to get together early. Coalition forces have to form up at sea early in the process, learn each other's capabilities, and refine their procedures. We need to make sure we have the right mix of forces at sea. There were many kinds of capabilities represented, including one worth mentioning is that the Malaysians provided ships that had capacity in them for both troops and equipment. And had we needed to substitute something for commercial ships that didn't show up, for example, the Malaysians and a French troop ship were ready to step in and help us out with that problem. So we need to have the right mix of capabilities at sea. We had an Aegis cruiser with its enormous surveillance capability of the area, precision naval gunfire capability. That was an important addition to our forces. So you need to get there early, you need to have the right stuff, you need to have the participation of people who are enthusiastic in supporting the mission. All of those are lessons that we learned.
I think we learned a lot about working with our allies, with coalition partners. We learned a lot about how to coordinate on operations where we have forces that are not only joint but combined in nature. I think we continue to refine skills that the Navy and Marine Corps has worked on for decades now in projecting power across the beach and supporting it from the sea. I think we learned a lot about operating in environments like this where you're really in these so-called operations other than war. Operating at night, we did 2 amphibious withdrawals at night with the Italian forces and the U.S. forces. We landed at night. We did a night relief in place as well as a daylight relief in place. We had a night passage of lines of the Pakistani forces through Italian and U.S. Marine lines. Those are all very tricky and complex operations. In addition, we did a non-combatant evacuation operation of a number of Brown and Root employees, of UNISOM workers that stayed on, of press, and of several refugees. Again, we continue to learn a lot about these kinds of operations, the tactics, the techniques, the kinds of equipment we need, the doctrine we should have, and how best to organize our forces. And a lot of things that we can capture from this operation will go into those banks of lessons learned that each of the services and the joint world has established so that we can pick up from these and learn how best to structure our forces for these kinds of operations.